As the nation celebrates its 61st birthday, it's increasingly becoming clear and depressingly so to say that Nigeria as a country is becoming divided, polarized more than ever, fractured, so to speak. With us to look at the issues of Nigeria at 61, we want to find out how's the state of democracy doing as far as this 61st anniversary is concerned. With us is a legal practitioner, Barrister Inibehe Effiong. It's a pleasure having you on SaharaTV.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Barrister, how will you assess Nigeria as a country for the past 61 years?
Well, let me start by saying that for the over 3 decades that I have been alive as a citizen of this country, it is very difficult to say that the country is going in the right direction. And for those who are students of history, who have studied the progression of the country from 1st of October 1960 till date, it will not be difficult for one to reach a conclusion that the country has failed to deliver on the most basic and elementary, things, gains that every civilized country that has been independent for this number of years is supposed to showcase. It has been from one tragedy to the other, from one dictatorship to the other, from one corruption scandal to the other. So it has become increasingly difficult for Nigerians in general to say that this country is successful. It appears that the Nigerian experiment so far has been a total failure. It has been a total failure. From the political evolution, to economic development, to institutional reforms, social justice, human capital development, infrastructural development, and so on and so forth. All aspects of our national life have been a tragedy. The executive is not functioning. Of course, we had the military interregnum, the period of military dictatorship, where we were ruled by a barrel of a gun, from the Aguiyi-Ironsi coup to Abubakar. It has been one failure to another. And of course, the civilian adventurers have also not lived up to the promises of a civilized country, the promises that were made upon gaining independence. Therefore, my conclusion is that the Nigerian experiment has failed. But does that mean I have given up on the country? The answer is no. I still believe Nigeria is redeemable. But the road to redemption is very far, is very long. It looks almost impossible. But I believe that with the right leadership, the tide can be turned. Things can change. But that today, my conclusion is that this country had become the black spot in the global map. Nigeria had become an embarrassment to the black race. What is supposed to be the pride of Africa, or some, mockingly described as Giant of Africa, had become the shame of Africa. Even other younger African countries, like our neighbor Ghana, is faring better than us in terms of democracy, in terms of governance, and even key infrastructure. You cannot say Nigeria is faring better than Ghana. So you see Nigerians now migrating in their thousands to Ghana to study. because the educational system has collapsed. So what do we really have to show for it since 1960? You did it, education, our schools offering qualitative and standard education? The answer is no. Do we have healthcare system in this country? The answer is no. Till now, doctors are still on strike. The justice sector, is this something that we can take pride in? The answer is no. Is it in terms of law enforcement? After these years of independence from the colonialists, the military institution today is not respected by the citizens because it engages in constant and incessant extrajudicial execution, right, lawlessness and impunity, corruption, and unmitigated disregard for due process and rules of engagement. The police is nothing to write home about. It has at some point been rated the worst in the whole world. So in terms of law enforcement, the country has failed. Is it the economy we are going to talk about? So for me, the experiment has been a failure.
Talking about the fact that you mentioned the fact that the Nigerian experiment has failed, this has led to a lot of agitations for secession. We have IPOB, for example, which is a proscribed group, as well as the Oduduwa Nation. And one factor that has led to these agitations has been the failure of the current President General Muhammadu Buhari, to manage the diversities and his nepotistic appointments. What's your view about it? We'd like you to speak to that issue.
If there is one lesson of history that Buhari has taught Nigerians very harshly, it is that old habits never die. There were persons who believed that this man was capable of redemption, that he can be salvaged, that the monstrous perception that Buhari was viewed as a military dictator, the shameless tribalism, is ethnocentric and very nepotic approach to governance, to issues, is avowed religious extremism. People thought, like Tinubu said, that he was a reformed Democrat. As I said, Buhari has taught Nigerians a harsh lesson of history, that it gets to a point that people cannot really change. Do not forget that as at 2015, when this president was elected, during that election, the main argument of his opponents, of those who were strongly and ferociously opposed to his candidacy, was that he was a bigot. He was seen as an ethnic jingoist. He was seen as a tribal supremacist, as a divisive and openly polarizing figure. So people thought that having failed in previous elections, that he would have been humble. He would have understood the need for inclusiveness, the need to be humane. Unknown to Nigerians, Buhari came back with a very determined commitment for vengeance. He came to destroy the country, whatever was left of Nigeria. And he has not hidden it. He has gone to the extreme. He has made all the false lines of this country to be more obvious. He started by constituting a terrible cabinet that took him almost 6 months in his first term He came back with the same names. He then openly said, you cannot trade those 95%, he now brought a percentage discrepancy that you can't treat all parts of the country equally. And he lived up to it by popularizing his regime with people from his own section of the country, specifically not in Muslims. And he does this so shamelessly, without any feeling of contrition. And we have seen that in the armed forces. We have seen that in NNPC. We have seen that in all key sectors of our national life. In terms of policies, Buhari has not hidden his disdain. And when people say Buhari believes in Nigeria, it is a lie. Buhari does not believe in a united Nigeria. Buhari only supports the unity of Nigeria to the extent that it favors its ethno-religious sentiments. For me, this is tragedy. It has been tragedy for the last 6 years. IPOB, Oduduwa agitation, Biafra agitation are not new. These things have been there. These agitations have been there before him. But they became more pronounced on account of his deliberate policy of exclusion, on account of his mismanagement of the heterogeneous nature of the Nigerian state. A country that has over 250 ethnicities, diverse religion, cannot be governed by somebody who sees himself primarily as a tribal chief or a religious leader. So the point remains that the agitation for Biafra, the dimension it has taken, the agitation for Oduduwa Republic, the dimension it has taken, is a direct response to what is perceived to be the divisive and polarizing policies of this government. Look at the issue of the herdsmen that also largely accounts for this agitation. What has been the response of Buhari? He has doubled down. He keeps insisting that it is only what favors the herdsmen that should hold sway. Despite that this is 21st century, this is 2021. You have this man, this president, talking about grazing roads of colonial days after Nigeria has become independent, after the passage of the Land Use Act, that vests land in every state in the governor in trust for the people. He's still talking about grazing reserves. He's still talking about grazing roads, cattle colony, Ruga, and other senseless and uncivilized policies. When civilized countries are sending people to the moon, you have a president who is fanatically attached to cattle. He cannot understand why Nigerians are angry that he gives preeminence to the life of cattle and human beings. And as I've always said, if you want Buhari to respond to the situation, just get cattle and cows, get cows involved. Like I said, if veterinary doctors were the ones on strike, Buhari would have intervened because he knows that cattle are going to die. But he doesn't understand why medical doctors are on strike because it's human beings that are involved. So this is the gravity of the matter. It's not a joking matter. We have a president who is disconnected from civilization.
We'll still get back to the issue of the country's fault lines and the inadequacies of the president. Let's look at the judiciary, which is supposed to, how will you assess, what's your assessment of the judiciary? Has it forcefully asserted its independence with regards to funding, with regards to the rule of law? I mean, we've seen utter disregard for the rule of law under this government. How will you feel? How has the judiciary fared?
It is my constituency. So we lawyers are always very careful in criticizing the judiciary. But the truth must be told. I do agree that the challenges facing the Nigerian judiciary is not totally self-inflicted. The other arms of government, particularly the executive, have also made this difficult by their disregard for this institution, their disregard to orders of courts. It is obvious that the government, both at the federal and the states, do not take the issue of judicial independence seriously. The judiciary has been underfunded over the years. Many state governors in Nigeria see the state judiciary as an extension of the Ministry of Justice. They don't have regard for court orders. Look at the issue of local government autonomy. Despite pronouncement of the Supreme Court, governors are still dissolving purportedly democratically elected local government councils and supplant them with caretaker committees, despite judicial litany of judicial pronouncements. But my point remains that the judiciary must redeem itself. And so far, the judiciary has not asserted its authority. So my answer is no. We are seeing a trend, a very worrisome one indeed, under the current regime, where some members of the judiciary, some judges, not all, some judges, have been a bit hesitant, a bit reluctant to assert their independence, to uphold the Constitution, and to hold the executive arm of government accountable. I'll give you one popular example. The continuous contempt that the agency called the State Security Service, SSS, which the media, your people in the media, you people continue to still refer to them as DSS, or Department of State Services. The correct name is State Security Service. So that is what is known under the National Security Agency's Act. This agency has tried to make itself above the law, to showcase this larger-than-life, attitude. Yet, when they arrest people, they keep them in their custody without this regard to the constitutional right to personal liberty, which states that nobody should be kept beyond 24 hours without being taken before a court. The SSS continues to flout this constitutional provision. Many Nigerians are in SSS custody. Nobody knows about them in a so-called democracy. What is the point I want to make? The point I'm trying to make is that even when fundamental right enforcement applications are filed, or bail applications are filed before judges, we find a situation where judges are very reluctant to assert themselves. You see situations where it is clearly shown that the order of a court has been violated, flouted by this agency. The judges shy away, some of our judges shy away from taking a firm position against the contemners. We see situations where instead of ordering immediate and unconditional release of persons that are illegally detained, some judges will rather impose stringent bail conditions. Even when it is shown that upon the perfection of those stringent bail conditions, the SSS will still not release people immediately, as they are supposed to do. What are judges supposed to do? Remand them at the correctional center. Some judges will still send people back to the same custody of the agency that flouts and has become notorious for flouting the orders of the court. So that is not a judiciary. For now, that is ready to assert itself. And my position is that judges and lawyers must take it upon themselves to redeem the country. Because the way it is, the legislature is gone. This is the worst National Assembly of my lifetime. Ahmed Lawan has turned the National Assembly to a loan-approving assembly. It's no longer a law-making institution. They just sit as yes men to approve whatever Buhari wants. No attempt has been made by the current leadership of the National Assembly to checkmate the excesses of the executive arm of government. They cannot say no to Buhari, they cannot say no to the president. That is not how a presidential system of government is supposed to go. A presidential system of government necessarily requires checks and balances. But that is there. The executive itself is incapable of checkmating itself. Because the institutions are weak, the institutions are corrupt, the institutions are compromised. The legislature has been bought over by the executive. So only the judiciary, as far as I'm concerned, the judiciary is the most important institution that can redeem our democracy. That is why it is important for our judges to be assertive, for our judges to live up to their judicial oath, for our judges to exude courage and hold the executive and the legislature accountable.
That's quite ominous, considering the fact that there's been an erosion of the authorities of both the legislative and the judiciary arm of government. There was one statement that you made earlier, which I continue to resonate, and that has to do with the country's fault lines, to put it that way. We've seen the British weaponization of the country's fault lines by self-serving leaders in recent time, and we've seen the north-south dichotomy or divide where northern governors reject certain positions of the southern governors. And one begins to wonder, where will this actually lead to? And will this not further polarize the country?
On principle, or as a matter of principle, I do not believe in assumption of political position on the basis of ethnicity or religion. I believe in a merit system, or a system where people assume political positions on the basis of merit. But the hard reality for a country that is heterogeneous, a country that is diverse, is that there have to be deliberate attempts at inclusion, deliberate attempts at giving up part of the country a sense of belonging. That is the wisdom behind the federal character principle under Section 14 of the Constitution, which states that there shall be no predominance of people from a particular section of the country.
But the actions of this present regime of government has actually
It is against federal character. But Buhari is the greatest beneficiary of federal character. Because he wouldn't be president today if there was no agitation that power should shift from the north. That is the truth of the matter.
From the south.
From the south to the north. As at 2015. In fact, even as at 2011. So when these political actors continue to ignite divisive tendencies, it is to the detriment of the country. Now, what is my position on zoning and rotation of power? My position is that Nigeria has to decide. We have to decide as the people what we want. Because the hypocrisy of the northern governors is just disgusting. If you are saying that you are opposed to rotational presidency, then you must tell us what you are in support of. You cannot just say it is a question of number. Because the number has to be productive. It is not just about saying, oh, we have the population. That translates to what? If you are opposed to rotational presidency, that means it's another way of saying you are against federal character. Then, You have to make it across board. You have to make it as a matter of principle. So that even in the educational system, there shouldn't be anything like educationally disadvantaged states. Every student should be treated equally. Are they also in favor of that? So this is the hypocrisy that I am talking about. But then the southern governors on their part, who are demanding for power to be shifted to the south. Do they really want this power to be shifted to the people of the south or to the elites of the south? Because in the final analysis, the Southwest had Obasanjo as president for 8 years. Did he solve the problems of the region? Jonathan was president for 6 years. I cannot point at a single thing in my state, Akwa Ibom, that I can say the credit should go to Jonathan for the 6 years he was president. Did he clean up Ogoni? The answer is no. Did he fix the East-West Road? The answer is no. So what can we really credit Jonathan for? If the argument was that Jonathan had served the term of the South-South or the Niger Delta. I am from the South-South region. Jonathan has never been my hero. He will never be my hero. He's part of the corruption. He's part of the decay. He's part of the national disease. I do not think it is fair to history to treat him as some form of hero of democracy. He failed to utilize a golden opportunity that history offered him. So the point is that in the final analysis, whether we are talking about rotational presidency or not, any system that does not translate to better governance, improvement of the livelihood of the citizens, is useless. The Northerners who are now, or some Northerners who are now saying that this is our time, one of us is in power, what do they have to show for it? They are being killed in an unprecedented manner. Look at the savagery. Look at the bloodbath. Look at the carnival of deaths that we are witnessing across the north. Military facilities, military barracks are being raided by terrorists that the regime choose to call bandits, by Boko Haram, and other non-state actors. Look at the number of out-of-school children in the north. Look at what the Ahmad jury system has done. The point is that how has the north benefited?
Many Nigerians are of the opinion that there is a fundamental need for a radical reform, overhaul of our presumed democracy. What kind of reform agenda should be adopted now to reboot our democracy?
My assessment, an honest opinion, is that the way things are, given what we have seen in the last 60 years or 61 years, it is very difficult, or it looks almost impossible, for the political leadership to bring about the sort of change, the sort of improvement in the life of our country people, of our countrymen and women, that one can confidently say that indeed this is a civilized country. It appears that any attempt to change the status quo that is not revolutionary or radical will just be an exercise futility. That is why I totally align with those who believe that only revolution at this point can change Nigeria. I do not think periodic election is enough. Except, of course, the election itself is revolutionary, because there are many ways through which a revolution can come. In which case, the person who emerges as president must be a person that is not part of the rot, the decay, the malaise that we have been witnessing. The electoral system today is incapable of producing that type of president. So those who are depending on 2023, they are just they're engaging in oversimplification of a serious matter. It is clear to me that elections alone will not solve the problem of this country, because the political actors are not willing to reform the electoral system. You can imagine that 60 years after independence, in fact 61 years, and that will be 61, isn't it? We are still debating whether there should be electronic transmission of results or not. In a country that mobile phones are used in all communities, that there is internet access in nearly all parts of the country, you still have this primitive debate in the National Assembly. Why? Because of ethnocentric and partisan interests. Therefore, my position is that the type of change that we need must not only be radical, it must be one that will shake this country to its very foundation. The type that will make everybody come to the realization that really there is a change, not a fraudulent change that Buhari promised Nigerians, that he had since resiled from. It has to be one that will bring all institutions of government to a point of realization that it is no longer business as usual. A type of change, a type of reform that will stop the mindless killings of citizens. Look at what is going on. The killing of Shiites, exactly, or members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria that was proscribed. Or is it IPOP? And of course, IPOP on their part too are also culpable, because it appears that they have lost control of their sit-at-home enforcement. We now have random criminality, like the killing of the husband of the late Dora King. No part of the country is secure. So the type of change that we want must be one that will also give the people of the Southeast a sense of inclusion, that will put an end to marginalization, that will put an end to corruption, that will put an end to weaponization of institutions of state for personal and partisan gain. That is not the change that will come about strictly through the ballot. It is a change that Nigerians have to vote for on the streets. So those who are pretending that APC or PDP is going to bring about a new Nigeria, they are deceiving themselves. Because these are twin bedfellows. These are siblings of a corrupt mother and father who are only quarreling about who should get the larger portion of the meal. As far as I am concerned, I do not see Nigeria having a new breed of life without something drastic happening, such that people like Babangida will no longer be able to speak anymore. Because Babangida is still granting interviews. This is someone who destroyed the country. This is someone who made nonsense of the economy with the structural adjustment program. This is somebody who set our democratic experiment backward by several decades by annulling June 12 election. But he's still granting press interviews, still being treated as some form of elder statesman. Jonathan, who also fell, is also being saluted all over the country. And you wonder what Nigerians are really looking for. So I think we have this emotional attachment to leaders who have failed us. And that is unfortunate. That is why I am saying that that change has to come from the citizens. The Nigerians today are distracted by sentiment. They are distracted by ethnicity that politicians are capitalizing on. They are distracted by partisan arguments. Whereas the real picture, the bigger picture, is the common suffering. That is the common denominator. They are suffering in all parts of the country, from the north to the south to the east and the west. Therefore, the solution for me has to come from the citizens. Buhari has shown us that populism is not always the answer. Because this was the man some thought was reserved, was conservative, that under him there will be no corruption, but corruption had feasted in an unprecedented manner. His wife is now partly resident in Dubai. The president now goes to he lives practically in the United Kingdom, where he goes regularly for his medical checkup. His children went to the best schools abroad. So how can he be bothered about what is going on in the country? Even when he's here, nobody feels his presence. It seems the man is, perpetually on vacation. Nobody is feeling the presence of the president. That is why I'm saying that change is not a change. APC cannot give Nigeria that change. PDP cannot give Nigeria that change. Nigerians must give themselves that change on the streets. That is my position.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.